Oh my goodness. Somebody stole my parking spot and I was an emotional mess after that. Anybody else relate? I think we've all had something happen and you know in your head it's not that big of a deal, but something inside of you emotionally, mentally is saying that it is a big deal. So let me just unpack this for a moment and tell you about what I learned in terms of the deeper side of this. So I had a situation where about a week ago, a vehicle parked in front of my house. Not a big deal. It happens a lot. And this vehicle sat there for about 7 days. So it's been about 7 days. And after, day two, day three, it was kind of irritating. But I thought, I'm just not going to make a big deal about it. No problem. Carry on. Days go by. This vehicle still hasn't moved. And it was interesting because that's very unusual for this particular area. There's lots of vehicles coming, parking, leaving. I have clients who come to my home. My next door neighbor also has clients come to her home as well for sessions. And so anyway, this is basically how it's been. And so today comes day 7 and I was chatting with somebody and they were like, you could find out if it's a stolen vehicle. And I thought, that might be a good idea. So I thought I would just call bylaw just to find out if it was in fact a vehicle that had maybe been stolen or left there. I'd kind of thought maybe somebody across the street in the condos might actually have left their vehicle there. Anyway, I didn't know, but I just was like, it sure would be nice to have that spot available for myself. I just wanted it as an option to park instead of parking in the back. And then also I have clients who come. So I mentioned that already. So I'm on hold with bylaw and I had this little thought. What if I just make sure that it's not belonging to one of my next door neighbors? And I hadn't seen the vehicle before, so didn't think much of it. And so I thought, I'm just going to go over and check and see if they might know whose vehicle it was. Anyway, it turned out it was my next door neighbor's family member who was visiting, and the vehicle had just been left there and hadn't moved. And so all of that is fine. I just said I just wanted to check and make sure that it actually, belonged to somebody and wasn't a vehicle that was just left here on the street, because usually it's 3 days and then you have to move your vehicle. That's the typical bylaw. So anyway, they go away and I'm sure they were kind of thinking like, what, I'm thinking in my mind, they're thinking this was a big deal. And I leave and I come home and then I start stewing, right? Anybody done that before? I just am feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm the biggest pain in the butt. And, like this isn't a big deal and you're making a big deal out of this and all of this kind of stuff. And consciously in my head, I know that I sincerely actually just wanted to make sure that it wasn't in fact something that actually was, somebody had left there. Plus, I really did want access to that parking spot in front of my home. And anyway, and so I'm going through all of this stuff and consciously I'm like, Crystal, this isn't a big deal. But emotionally, it was a big deal. And I'm like, wow, this is really triggering something deep. And I'm like, what in the world is it? So I take a moment and I just close my eyes and I'm tuning in and I'm like, what is the big deal about this parking space and having access to it? The first thing that came up was I learned, okay, I'm too attached to something that doesn't technically belong to me. It's public parking, of course. I'm like, okay, so there's attachment. Attachment number 1, I'm too attached to this. The second thing that came up was that I had this inner thing that when I tuned in, actually, it was like 6 or 7-year-old me showed up. And it was like, I had a situation or some experiences as a child where when I asked for something that I wanted, I received, sort of an off the cuff remark from an adult, or, the feeling of like not being able to have what I wanted, but being in trouble for even asking. And so I was feeling all of the emotion associated with that event So it really wasn't about what was going on today, but the situation that's been going on for the past week actually was triggering that. It's like, don't rock the boat. Don't ask for what you want. Don't assert yourself. You could cause problems. And then the last part was around being retaliated against. So there was fear that I was going to be in trouble or something was going to happen. And it was interesting because I was having all these different weird thoughts going on in my mind that now that I actually even just pursued finding out who the vehicle actually belonged to, that I was going to be retaliated against. And I'm like, wow, these are some fairly deep emotional things that I need to heal and move through. And, it didn't take very long, but I needed to sit and see it. And so many of us have probably had these experiences where consciously, in your conscious mind, logically, this is not that big of a deal. And probably most of us actually kind of do that. We shove it down and keep moving on with the rest of our day. And if there's anything that I've learned, it's that I don't want things to stay stuck or trapped in my body and in my emotions and in my mind. And so I took the time. It didn't take very long, but I acknowledged each of these different areas that I mentioned that needed to be seen and validated. And then I said, what do you need? And there was this part of me, the child part of me just said, I just want a hug. Just give me a hug, and just wanted to be comforted. So I, as the adult version of myself, did that for my inner child. And I basically shared and spoke words of comfort that she needed to hear. And it's so amazing how much healing can happen. And this is a prime example of what happens when we get triggered. And if we don't pay attention to the trigger, we'll get triggered again and again and again. And so through this situation, then what I'm actually doing is I'm doing the inner work, just taking a few minutes to do it. It didn't ruin my whole night. In fact, now I can laugh about it. I could laugh about it and joke. And I was having a chat with a friend about how crazy, and funny it is that our minds just get carried away. But these are all subconscious things that kind of hijack us and keep us from being able to really be in the present moment. And a lot of the doubts and the fears and the lack of confidence that we have is not necessarily about what's happening right now in our lives, but actually what's happened in our lives and sometimes in past life types of situations. So we're healing and we're integrating those different aspects of ourselves that are being seen and are showing up through the experience that we might be having with others. And internally, there was a feeling of like, wow, this is like a huge conflict. But actually, it wasn't even a big deal, except for the fact that emotionally and mentally, my brain and my mind were just going off on all kinds of tangents, and I needed to pull it in and rein it in. And so I really encourage you, if you're having one of those moments where something doesn't seem fair or you're being triggered, to just take a moment and ask and find out what is actually going on here. What's underneath the surface of that current situation that is actually triggering you? I guarantee you it will be something that is asking for healing. So the trigger is the signal for healing and for you to pay attention. And amazingly, you can move through things with great speed as you get better and better at this. So instead of like, sometimes, we might have something take us out for several days, or it might even lead to, longer forms of anxiety or depression. And as you do the healing and the acknowledging, what happens is you can move through it quicker. It might be a day. And then as you get better at it and move through some more, it might be a few hours or it might be 10 minutes. And so the more committed we are to our healing and sort of looking at what's happening, the subconscious mind is kind of hijacking through these kinds of situations, then I can become more present and in my body as well. And so I just wanted to share that with you. It's quite humorous sometimes with how much of a tangent our minds and our emotions go on. And so left unchecked, it can really have a huge impact on our life, on our day, in our relationships, and how we feel about ourselves and our confidence. And the big learning here for me really was, Crystal, you are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to have your wants and needs, and it's just as important as the next person. And so this was something that I needed to validate within myself, but I needed to see the contrast in terms of the experience and allow that trigger to actually be seen and then heal it. So amazingly, what it means to me is like, okay, let's detach from things that I think are not fair, or things that I, think about my parking space, for example. It's logically, it's not that big a deal, but emotionally it was. And now that I've dealt with that, I can let go of that, because in the long game, it's really not that important. And so now I can actually I can sit in that and really embody that level of detachment from things, people, places, and things. So in this case, it was something more specific in the material realm. So I hope that encourages you, and just know that you're not the only one who goes through stuff that feels like it really sets you off or you get triggered. And I just encourage you to do the work. And if you feel that you need some help, I'm here to help and support you. It's important that we each do the work, and sometimes we just need that little extra bit of help to move through some things to soften the process a little bit. So have a wonderful day. Website is www.newbeginningshw.ca. And you can hop on there. I have a beautiful course called the Intuition Code course. And I have another group program that I'm going to be launching within the next month or so to do this very thing, to help people heal and grow in the context of community and being able to support one another. And it's going to include a monthly healing meditation as well that will be sent to you. And I know you're going to enjoy that. And it's going to be like $25, $27, something like that with tax. So I will keep you posted. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And don't let anybody ruin your day by taking your parking spot. All right. Take care. Bye for now.